Smile, though your heart is breaking. Smile. Something quaking. Smile, you'll get by. Do, do, do. Do, do, do. Hey, everybody. Welcome to a very special review podcast. I am torn. I saw Joker Thursday night preview screening at the local theater with Liz. We had our tickets, got my tickets like a week beforehand once they became available on sale. Was very excited. I think I was getting really antsy, getting really hyped. It's really kind of like there aren't too many movies that really get me like super crazy hyped. I'd say probably like Avengers Endgame was probably the last one where I was like really antsy and anxious to see it and very excited. And for Joker, I kind of like I was excited for a good long while, but it wasn't like, you know, a burning excitement like, yeah, I really want to see this. I can't wait for it. Like I was, you know, I try to keep my expectations low when I go into a lot of things. And then sometimes this kind of similar thing happened with Wonder Woman, where Wonder Woman, before it came out, started getting all these like super positive critical reviews kind of flooding out there, and it got me excited. I was like, oh dang, well, especially after Batman v Superman, and everybody shat on that movie, and you know, I need to go back and rewatch that. It's been a bit since I've seen it. It's been a couple of years at this point. But I enjoyed Batman v Superman well enough. The first time I saw Batman v Superman, I had a warm response to it. I liked it, but I wasn't quite sure about it, and then I went and saw it again. And I was like, no, I really liked that movie. And then the extended edition came out, the whatever it's called, Ultimate Cut or whatever you call it. And that one was even better. So I was like, okay, this makes the movie even like, because I like, especially when a movie feels like it's kind of chopped up already and it feels like it's missing something. When you're taking out subplots in a film, it's definitely better once you add it back in. And then it's like, okay, well, this explains the things that were a little weird in the movie in the first place. So, with that extra elaboration in the Batman v Superman Ultimate Edition or whatever they called it, it struck me even more. So like I really like that movie. I like that movie. And you know, not many people like that movie. I mean, not that many people, but there are plenty of people who do not like Batman v Superman. Pretty much all the people that I ever like, my friends and stuff that I would meet, I remember because I was going to events around that time and nobody liked that movie. Everybody was like, oh, it sucked. Like, whatever, blah, blah, blah. So, it was there weren't too many people out in the wild that I ever came across that liked it. And so you had Wonder Woman coming around and everybody seeming to really like it. And I'm like, oh, well, at least it won't be that case where it's like, oh, well, I really like it, but nobody else likes it as far as like talking to people. But then I went and saw Wonder Woman and I was like, oh, I mean, I don't hate it. I like I've seen Wonder Woman like 3 or 4 times at this point. The movie itself, story, plotting, and some of the characters are just not that strong for me. Like, Wonder Woman's great. Chris Pine's character's great. I think her crew is really good. They meld really well. But the bad guys suck. All of the bad guys, the ones who you think are like the main bad guys, and then the revealed bad guy by the end of that movie, and all that stuff. Like it's really weak for me. When I'm watching it, I'm like, oh, this is so bland and not good, and it really just, especially anytime the bad guys are on screen, I'm just like, I don't like this. It's not really that good. It doesn't strike with me. And not that the filmmaking was very weak in Wonder Woman. It was just the story and the plotting and all that stuff that I didn't like, but that's part of a movie for me. So it kind of brought it down where it was like, oh, dang, everybody was saying how great this movie was. And even after it came out, it was very, widely, a lot of people really liked it. But I have that thing where it's like, I liked it, but I have that caveat. I liked it, but I didn't like the story. I didn't like some of the characters. Now, Joker. I think, I talked about it last month on the podcast. The patron only podcast, where I was talking about how I was pretty excited for it, and the reviews had just come out of the oh gosh, I can't even remember what it was. It was an Italian film festival, and I think Venice Film Festival,
And it played at a couple other film festivals, and it was getting this kind of really great critical response. And so I was like, ooh, dang. And the biggest thing that everybody seemed to say about it was Joaquin's performance is amazing, and it's just a beautiful movie as the way it's shot. And so I just kind of didn't when it came to talking about any of the plot stuff, I avoided it all. I didn't want to see I didn't want to know what it was about, and I also didn't want to, have my judgment tainted as far as like what I thought about the story and all that stuff. So, fast forward that period of time to Thursday night when I went and saw the movie. Packed crowd. It was the Thursday night preview. I always love going to see it night before opening day, just because that is the crowd that is really like gunning to see that movie. And the crowd that is generally, you get the most electricity out of the audience. I know a lot of people don't like a lot of audience participation in their films when they go to see it. Like, I like when a crowd's getting into a movie. I like when people are laughing. I like when people are cheering, if it's warranted. Sometimes it's a little much, especially like something like Avengers. Although, I feel like after a while the filmmakers knew to kind of leave pauses in there, but sometimes there would be a point in like different movies where a cheer would happen and then you miss a line of dialogue, or it goes on for too long and people are really just like super jazzed and you miss some tiny little things. But throughout pretty much the entirety of the Joker, except for a couple key moments, and if you've seen the movie, and I'm not going to be spoilery about it right off the bat here. But if you have seen the movie, there are a couple moments that I'd imagine would elicit a reaction out of any audience that's going to see that movie. There was of the two kind of big reaction, maybe laugh moments out of the film. There was one that I wasn't necessarily laughing that much at. I mean, I get it. I understand the humor of it. I just didn't find it particularly I didn't find it that funny. But the reactions in general were more so just like, oh, like there's a couple of genuine reactions of like, oh, okay, a little bit of cringing from the audience just because of either some extreme violence that kind of pops up all of a sudden, or the movie just kind of takes you aback. And yeah, I like that. It's kind of what adds to the experience for me a lot of the time. But I felt like I was kind of out of sync with that feeling this time around a little bit. Again, like when everybody's laughing and you're not really laughing or reacting to the thing that's happening. Like, I felt kind of like I was back at Wonder Woman again, where it's like I'm watching the movie and I'm taking it at its face value. I'm following along with it. And I'm noticing these, and maybe this is kind of the filmmaker in me, but I'm noticing like there's early on there's a lot of little dubs where like a character is you see them talking and then it cuts away and that character continues to talk, but it's clearly something that was added in after the fact and not actually recorded that day, to kind of either further convey something or whatever. And it seems like maybe they're trying to really convey something that they maybe didn't film at the time. And like, so there were small filmmaking things that were starting to kind of like pile up as time went on, where I'm like, oh, this seems like it was either condensed or whatever. And maybe they were trying to cut some things out. And like some of those kind of took me out of it, where I felt like it was a little bit of weak storytelling and or filmmaking going on in the movie. Again, movie looks beautiful. And a lot of the performances in the movie are really good. Obviously Joaquin, the titular character himself, Joker, playing character Arthur Fleck, a performing clown who just does general odd jobs at this company that seems to have like a bunch of clowns that they send out. It's like a clown for hire company, sending out clowns. And, we all seen it in the trailer where he's spinning the sign and then the sign gets stolen and he gets beaten up in the alleyway. The movie starts off with that. And I was really surprised at how much of the trailer really does tend to show a lot of the early on stuff. There is some stuff later on in the movie, but a lot of it is kind of the first 20 minutes of the film. And I felt like I was kind of seeing a slightly more elongated version of the trailer at the beginning, because obviously there were some scenes built around that stuff, and there was more dialogue and all that stuff, but you kind of get the gist of a lot of those scenes early on. I felt like I was kind of waiting for a little bit more elaboration early on in the film, but it's kind of more so straightforward in using that same template of it reminded me a little bit of where Suicide Squad, the trailer, was really well received, and so they had like the trailer house come in and edit some of the movie, like re-edit some of the movie. It felt like either, unless the cut was already pretty locked in and they just kind of took a lot of because some of the shots in the movie are kind of like same length from in the trailer and cut in almost the exact same way, if not the exact same way. So I'm not sure if that's either, whatever, they either took the template from the trailer or the trailer took the template from the movie. But that for some of the things that I was kind of expecting a little bit more out of, I would have liked to have seen more elaboration. Again, these are kind of little nitpicks that I'm on right now, but I'm kind of trying to overall demonstrate how I felt about the movie. I felt a little like the movie was a little predictable, and maybe if I almost feel like if I hadn't seen a trailer, I wonder how I would have felt otherwise. Not that the trailers give much away, but like it just kind of, it doesn't do much more from what the trailers were kind of putting out there. I thought there would be more elaboration on some of the ideas that were kind of presented in that. You get the idea of, okay, this is a Joker who is kind of downtrodden by society. He's, not being listened to by his therapist, or social worker. She's not a social worker. She's a doctor that he's seeing, the state sponsored sort of doctor and all that stuff. And he's this kind of downtrodden dude who kind of is just crazy and not regarded by society well, and he kind of just ends up turning towards his more baser instincts that have been kind of bubbling up. I feel like some of the kind of twisty elements of the movie, and there are some kind of small twists in the film, were really predictable. And should I see, this is my thing. I'm really struggling with this because everybody online that I've been seeing has been really loving this movie. I'm seeing 10 out of 10 and 8 out of 10 and whatever. And like the biggest thing is performance is amazing, looks great, good music, whatever, which I have a little bit of a quarrel with. And I'll talk about more so when I get into spoilers, but that's what I'm kind of wrestling with, is like, I liked it, but I didn't love it. And I feel like coming online and putting out my review and saying I didn't love it, is not that it's weird, but I feel like some of my issues are, I don't know if anybody really cares about the issues that I particularly have with the movie. I felt like it was relatively cliche. There was something that is kind of a twist in the movie that I saw the entire time. I'm like, I know what this is the entire time. And I don't know if that's my own fault or if that's should I fault the movie for that? Because was really predictable and it just played out the way I was expecting it to play out. But it felt like it was like a element that was kind of set up in the trailer. Watching the trailer, it's like, okay, well, where is this going to go? And then it doesn't really go anywhere. And maybe that's an expectation thing. I was bringing my own expectations to it, so then they weren't being met, and then that's just me, my own bad. I'm really trying to take the movie at its own face value and be like, what do I think of what I was given? I had tweeted about how I really wanted to kind of give it a second chance before I went and actually reviewed it, because a lot of people were really curious about me reviewing this movie. And I still haven't seen it a second time, but I really know what happens. I've seen it, and I not that I won't see it again, but I didn't leave the theater going, yeah, I the second the credits started rolling, I was like, okay. I mean, Joaquin was a terrifying Joker, I would say. He is psychotic. He is he's not the haha funny Joker, you know? He's not the darkly sardonic Joker. He is just this, you know, sadistic like he's a fucking psychopath with, you know, delusions of grandeur and all that stuff. Like he's just a crazy fucking dude who's insane. And but not that the Joker can't be that, but my favorite Jokers are generally ones that are a little bit more tongue in cheek and really kind of darkly comic, you know, as opposed to like life's a joke, so I'm gonna just laugh. Like it's kind of more like the comedian more so than the Joker, where, you know, and I know that comedian was supposed to be kind of like the Joker. Well, I don't know. Well, he was supposed to be kind of like a reflection of the heroes, but from the Watchmen, you know, his whole thing is like, you know, life's a joke, so, you know, why take it seriously and whatever, we can do whatever the fuck we want because, you know, life is a joke. And it's really tough for me to express all of my feelings on the movie because my ultimate feeling is it's just kind of not shoddily made. It is, like I said, beautiful. It's gorgeously shot. It is well edited. It is. I feel like some of the direction is kind of. And going in, I was like, the creative pairing of Todd Phillips, the guy who did the Hangover films and Due Date and Old School and a lot of these kind of, you know, big comedies from back in the day. He felt like somebody, you know, especially since, you know, I'm into the Zack Snyder, dark, brutal, whatever kind of takes on Batman and all that stuff. I figured, and watching the Hangover movies, especially as they go along, they have that really kind of dark undertone, that dark, violent, like kind of a little over the top when it comes to that darkness thread going throughout them and in his filmmaking. And he does shoot a movie very well when it comes to, you know, how it looks. And I really felt like he was the match made in heaven with this kind of material. If he's doing his own, and he co-wrote this movie, but he didn't really bring any sort of sense of humor to it. It's literally just this nihilistic. I mean, there is, I guess, again, like I said, there's a couple laugh moments, but one was like more so towards the end that I thought was like a pretty genuine laugh for me. But there is one that kind of came before it that I felt like was kind of like, it was a little below the belt and not hilarious. I mean, it's hilarious if you find that kind of thing funny, and I know a lot of people do find that kind of thing funny. So it didn't make me laugh that much. I got it, but it didn't make me laugh. And I saw it coming too, because I was like, I noted something that happened earlier in that scene. Anyway, I'm kind of dancing around stuff because I don't want to mention, specifics as in regards to, you know, kind of how the movie's playing out, for anybody who has not seen the movie. And again, I'll shout out that I'm doing spoilers when I'm doing spoilers, but you know, I was expecting a little bit more, maybe some sort of like, you know, once Joaquin became the Joker, that it'd be a little bit more, you know, enjoyable to watch, just because it's not a fun, happy go time movie, which I was not expecting, but it never really brightens up where you're really behind this guy. Like early on, certainly you have pity for him. And you know, if you have empathy, it's kind of tough to watch this guy just kind of get knocked down, but he gets up again. But you're never going to keep him down because he gets knocked down. I was trying to make is that Smash Mouth? Who sings that song? I get knocked down and I get up again. Anyway, you know, it's not fun watching this guy just kind of go through this kind of shitty existence. And, you know, it's the point of the movie. But I would have expected something a little bit more enjoyable. You know, a lot of the time, especially when a movie looks so good and you get this vibe going through it, like that trailer kind of gave you a little bit of that vibe where it's like, yeah, he's dancing on the steps and he's getting into being the Joker and he becomes the Joker and yeah, or whatever, you know, something like even with the Heath Ledger Joker, he's scary, but he is also, you know, a delight to watch because he's reveling in all of this chaos that he's creating. and he is very tongue-in-cheek about it, and he's joking around, and because he's the Joker. And this version of the Joker is not that kind of Joker, and I maybe that's what kind of puts it on. Again, Joaquin is acting his ass off. He is electrified within the performance. He is completely committing to this character, but it's not very, I don't want to say engaging, but like, it's not, I don't know. Anytime he was on the screen, you can't look away, but I wanted more of him as Joker, or just, do like, I needed more from it. I didn't meet my expectations, overall. If fine enough movie. I didn't really think there was I felt like it probably could have been shorter for what had actually, from everything that would have that happened throughout the movie. I would have thought that I guess, the movie really takes its time with a lot of shots and stuff, either kind of elongated shots of Joker, or, a lot of kind of feeling the mood of something. But when it comes to plot stuff, I feel like with the amount of plot that there actually was, it didn't need to be as long as it was. I could have used more of it. Like, I could have used, not to say that it couldn't be longer. I wish it kind of was longer and there was a little bit more that went on. But for what had gone on within the film in general, I feel like it could have been shorter, a little bit tighter as well. I feel like I've had that criticism for a lot of movies I've seen recently. Sometimes I feel like they could have been 20, 30 minutes shorter and still have been fine for the movie. I'm really scatterbrained with this, but I am trying to kind of pick my thoughts about why. And I was really kind of hesitant to do this review because nobody wants to hear, especially on a movie where everybody's like, yeah, it's awesome. Like, nobody wants to hear, I got issues with it. I don't know. But I'm trying to explain really kind of what I thought about it. With that stuff. So, I mean, when it comes to the movie, I'm kind of with everybody else. I feel like, it looks great. Joaquin's performance is amazing. I feel like maybe it was the directing overall in the film. I mean, especially when you have a writer-director. And again, Todd Phillips is not the sole writer credit on the film, but he was a co-writer on the movie. And I feel like it was kind of, I feel like he found the movie a little bit with Joaquin. From what I've heard, there was a little bit of retooling while they were filming with the character and all that stuff, and they were being very flighty with the story, and kind of being, and you want to be that way. You don't want to be set in stone when you go into a thing. You certainly want to be prepared, but you don't want to be set in stone if a better idea comes along. But that made it kind of feel like there wasn't so much a solid direction at points within the movie. So, I feel like Todd Phillips is kind of the weaker link in there for me. When it comes to watching the movie, it feels like some of the direction is letting the movie down. But yeah, so that's good. Those are kind of my general thoughts. Again, looks great. Joaquin's fantastic. I would say see it. I wouldn't say not see it. It's a movie that you need to kind of satisfy your curiosity and watch it. It is not a light ride. I had seen Max had tweeted that there was a kid at his screening. This is not a movie for kids. I didn't see any kids at my screening, but it was 9:30 or 7:30 at on Thursday. So school night. Who knows? It seemed to be primarily adults at my theater. I didn't even catch any teens. I mean, there were probably some younger kids next to me, but they were in their 20s. So I'm a 30-year-old man now. I had my birthday about a week ago. So I'm an old man going to see my Yocker movie starring Joaquin Phoenix. And yeah, so it didn't. It didn't, make me leave the theater going, yeah. I was kind of more like, oof, oh no. Like that was, I mean, I felt like Joaquin was terrifying as the Joker. That was a thought I had, especially towards the end of the movie, where I was just like, he's pretty scary. He's a scary Joker, and I wouldn't want to meet him, and I wouldn't want to, cross paths with that dude. So, I mean, good job on that. But ultimately, the story in the movie, I feel like the movie was kind of sloppy. That was kind of the general feeling I left with, because a lot of, I have my Joker tattoo. I have Joker and Batman on my arm. Joker has the bang gun, and they're both kind of posed, almost eternally locked in battle on my arm. And I've been working. I got a part-time job working at a grocery store right around the corner from my place, to help, pay the bills and all that jazz. And I've so many of my customers, because back in the day when I used to work at the grocery store, I did not have a tattoo, and now I have this Joker tattoo on my arm. I had somebody today be like, "Oh, very timely tattoo." It's like, yeah, I got it like 6 years ago. But I've been getting everybody before the movie came out, like, "Oh, you're gonna go see that Joker movie? Oh, what do you think of that Joker movie?" And then today was the first day where I worked after I had seen the movie, and I've kind of had to tell people, like, there's one lady who was very curious about the movie, but all she wanted to know was if Joaquin was good. Because I was like, Joaquin was great. Movie's a little weak. And she was like, okay, good. I just wanted to know if Joaquin was good. And I was like, yeah, the movie's a little sloppy. She's like, oh, but Joaquin was good. I was like, yeah. She's like, okay. Like, that's all she wanted to know. And maybe that's all some people care about, is that they're like, just the performance was really great. Again, when Oscar time comes around, like, certainly I feel like he very much would be deserved of a nomination. And no marks against that, but a movie has to work as a movie for me, and I feel like it was just a little too basic. And maybe it's just my stupid, like, oh, well, they're doing this and then they did this, and like, maybe I'm being a little hard on it. I feel like I am some elements, and I'll get into spoilers here in a minute, but I feel like some elements I felt were a little too predictable, and therefore it kind of made the experience a little less enjoyable for me. I feel like if I hadn't seen some of the stuff coming, I would have maybe enjoyed it more and felt like there was more coming out of the movie. But, I felt like it was a little sloppy when it came to the direction. So I am now going to go into spoilers. So if you are heading off, thanks for listening. And let's move into spoiler territory. Spoilers from here on out. I just did like kind of Mark Hamill Joker, and then went into Heath Ledger Joker for some reason. And then what's Joaquin's laugh? Something like that. Not really. All right, let's tackle spoilers as they go down. So I feel like early on, like the stuff when it's Joaquin, Arthur Fleck, the character, when he's kind of starting to get crapped on. And again, we see right off the bat, I think the very first shot kind of shows about this isn't a guy who's right in the head. He already has his own issues. But I get him having to chase the kids with the sign and getting beat up and that kind of weighing down on him. But then his boss is just unrightful. I mean, I guess that's part of it too. But like, his boss is being super, like, out of his way unreasonable towards the sign. He's like, oh, they need the sign back. The business owner, look, he's going out of business. He needs that sign. Why does he need the sign? He's going out of business. I mean, I guess he's trying to get foot traffic in there. Just paint another sign. But his boss is very like, it's coming out of your paycheck. You give him the sign back. And Joaquin's just kind of sitting there broken, and we get this slow push in. And I like that, but his boss just, I don't know. It seemed a little shoehorny there. And that was kind of one of the first instances of like things are starting to go wrong for him. That we've seen. And obviously, as the movie goes on, we know that there's more going on with him than just that. And this is kind of the tip of the iceberg being pushed over. And the rest of it's about to, emerge. The rest of the iceberg, that is, because, icebergs are 90% underwater, and you just got the little tip at the top. And it's science. Didn't y'all learn that in school? Of course you did. Just that stuff was a little repetitive, like with the kids beating him up. It just seemed like everybody resorted to knocking him over and kicking him. But I guess it's that kind of like saying kick a guy while he's down, and he was already down from the start of the movie, it seemed, and like society just kind of keeps kicking him. But it was a little visual, yet at the very least repetitive for me. The first time Joker, the second time he's getting kicked and he's on the ground and all that stuff, it was very shocking once he shot those guys. Once his coworker had given him the gun, and he had the gun on the subway, and ended up shooting those rich kids who were kicking him and all that stuff, who were drunk and singing in his face. It was that scene was very. It was a little weird. Like sometimes I feel like, and not to say that I've experienced some real jerks in real life who kind of get in your face and are very obnoxious and or drunk. And yeah, it happens. But just sometimes in movies, I'm like, oh, they're laying it on a little thick. But probably not. There are jerks out there who really are dickheads like that. But it seemed a little over the top to me, and then it was just, man, like it was really jarring once anytime there was violence in this movie, it was very jarring, which I think is good. Like I felt like that felt good in the sense of like it should be jarring and it should be very kind of like violent and like, oh shit, like what the fuck. It's a little explosive when it comes to the violence in the movie. It just seemed like a very angry world that this movie was portraying. I guess it's very Taxi Driver-ish. Liz and I watched Taxi Driver not too long ago, and I wanted to watch it because I had heard this movie compared to Taxi Driver. I also watched King of Comedy for the first time. I talked about that on the podcast last month. And like I very much see both of those movies heavily ingrained into this script, embedded in a way that you kind of are like living in Gotham City, this city that it just feels so shitty. And in Taxi Driver, you have this city that is just like perverted, and just dark and murderous, and just this kind of nihilistic take on the world. And you're living in that, but like Gotham seemed, I guess they're talking on the radio about how there's like, trash line in the streets and it's been backed up for a bit, and they're getting super rats that are coming around, which if anybody noticed during that scene later in the film, once we get the umpteenth time we've seen the Waynes murdered, when Bruce is on his knees in the alleyway, there's a super rat that runs by behind him. I thought that was Liz and I were talking about that after the movie. I was like, did you see the rat run by? And she was like, yeah. Like it was one of the super rats. I thought that was kind of funny, but at the same time it was just weird seeing that again, and not really. I guess the new thing being brought to it this time was that the Joker inspired it. But all right, I'm getting super ahead of myself and being very scatterbrainedy and skippy. But the stuff with his mother, I felt was a little wobbly. Like that was what I was talking about earlier when I was talking about the dubs. Like her main one note thing is that all she wants to do is get a hold of Thomas Wayne, because Thomas Wayne, she used to work for the Wayne family, and Arthur thinks that she's trying to, she needs help from him, and so she's trying to maybe ask for money or support from him. Because she's not very well, and she keeps saying, send these letters out, and so he keeps sending out this mail, and there's never a response back. And early on, we see Thomas Wayne on TV. He's running for mayor, and he's saying, anybody who worked for the Wayne Foundation or whatever, was part of my family. We take care of employees past and present. And so he's really. It kind of seems like why isn't he replying to her and all that stuff. And one of the dubs at one point, she was like, I think falling asleep or something, and he's like trying to kind of move her along in the hallway, and she's like, it cuts away from her, and she's like, Thomas Wayne, Thomas, send the letter to Thomas Wayne. And he kind of has this look like, I don't know. It doesn't look like he's reacting to her saying that. It's just kind of like a shot that didn't have dialogue there, and I could tell was dubbed in. Just the audio was different. And I'm such a weirdo when it comes to audio, and especially dubbing, because dubbing in movies, it's ADR looping. It's very common in movies, and it usually is used in a way to kind of speed up story or fill in little gaps or kind of add extra little bits of dialogue. Either in comedies, it's done for jokes a lot, where if there's an extra joke they kind of want to tag to a scene, they'll do it in a dub. And it can, for me, it's very jarring. Sometimes that means, especially, it's super jarring when it's somebody who's on screen. And they have to dub their dialogue, and they can't quite lip sync it properly. Or sometimes you have something like Glenn Ross with Al Pacino's amazing speech towards the end of that movie, and there are specific lines in there that are dubbed. Like he sounds normal and it was like it was recorded on set, and then it's still showing the shot that he was just talking in 2 seconds ago, and it's still lingering on him, and it just goes like where he's just like, I told you, blah, 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 blah. And then it cuts it close into him and he goes, you fucking child. And it just like, it sounds completely different from the rest of the scene. You can tell it doesn't completely match up with his lips.
You want to learn the first rule you'd know if you ever spent a day in your life. You never open your mouth till you know what the shot is. You fucking child.
And I'm like, oh no, this is one of the most amazing scenes, like just takedowns in movie history. And it's not ruined, but it really does bother me every single time I watch that scene, that having that dub in there at the very end of this amazing speech. It's like, oh no, what was wrong with the audio? There must have been a lamp that fell or something during that. But it always seems kind of sloppy to me when they add the dubbing off screen, and it usually is, it feels like they're just really kind of trying to nail this point home about something, especially particularly that when she had already been kind of saying it over and over again about how she was trying to get a hold of Thomas Wayne. It seemed unnecessary to me, was kind of my biggest thing right there. And it was just a little heavy-handed and probably didn't need to be there. But we end up finding out after Arthur opens up the letter to Thomas Wayne that Penny, his mother, thinks that Arthur is his son, and you should meet your son, or whatever the letter said. I can't remember specifically what the letter was, but she wanted him to take responsibility for his son. And so Arthur there's this kind of like B story where he's trying to get a hold of Thomas Wayne so he can kind of confront him, and he just wants to know his dad because he thinks he's his father. And then later we end up finding out that that's not the case, and his mother's been lying to him. He was adopted, and we have that scene that was in the trailer where he goes to Wayne Manor and he confronts Bruce, who's playing on a swing set, and he does his little Adam West slide down the pole, which I thought was a nice nod on his little play set. But Bruce is just kind of there in this movie. He's just kind of standing around staring. He doesn't really say much or really do anything. He just kind of stands there and lets the stranger put fingers in his mouth, which is weird. It was interesting enough, but that was all kind of weird. I liked Alfred kind of being like, get out of here. No, I know who you are. Just get out of here. Like, you shouldn't be here and all that stuff. And I thought the Alfred was pretty good. Because they weren't like super trying to be like, this is the, like, you didn't even need to know. He's not like, I'm Alfred Pennyworth, how are you doing? It was just, British guy with beard, which I like Alfred with a beard. I like the idea, and he was pretty good. I like that. Interesting little twist on the character. Because he's pretty typical a lot of the time you see him, clean shaven British dude, usually older. It was interesting seeing a younger bearded Alfred. And then later we have the confrontation with Thomas Wayne and Arthur in the Charlie Chaplin theater, where he goes to the bathroom, and that's the other thing where it's just like he really seems like the movie seems hell-bent. Like, I get Arthur's laughing in Thomas's face, but I don't necessarily buy him punching him in the face in that moment. Because, Arthur's confronting him and saying, I'm your son. And he's like, Penny was crazy. Penny, you're not my son. And Arthur kind of, he's like, man, I just want you, come on, Dad. Like, I just want you to be you're my father. I just wanted to talk to you and get to know you or whatever. And, he starts getting his uncontrollable laughter that comes around because he has the condition where he can't, particularly in moments of, it seems like kind of in the most awkward of moments that he's feeling uncomfortable or whatever, he just starts laughing. Well, he's just like, oh, did you think this funny? Like, blah, blah, blah. And then, overreacts and punches the guy in the face. Penny is not a well-off person. He knows, he just seems like a dude with a short temper. He's a bit of an asshole, and maybe that's just how he is. But like, I didn't buy that he did. There wasn't much before that. Like, he seemed, obviously it was on television, so whatever. We didn't really get much interaction with Thomas Wayne before that, but it did. I don't know. I just don't buy him being that kind of an asshole who's just going to punch this. From what he knows, he should know that this guy isn't very mentally well, but he had come to his house and kind of messed with his kid. So maybe it's that defensive father kind of side to it, where it's like, don't come near my family again, which he did say. So maybe he was just trying to whatever. But like, you know, I felt like that was a little, I don't know. I just kind of explained my way out of that one, where it's just like, he was being defensive of his family, and maybe was a little warranted, but it was just kind of like, oh, geez, like, you don't need to punch him. Like, just like grab him, say, stay away from my family, stay away from me. And like, just leave it at that. But just be like, look, I'm sorry about your mother. But like, I don't know. Feels like he could have handled that a little bit better. But that's, again, me just rewriting the movie or whatever. And you kind of lose that fall from grace. Not that Arthur was ever within grace. But, you know, that kind of one bad day thing where he's just kind of getting constantly crapped on. The Thomas Wayne stuff was fine. Like that stuff was okay enough. It seemed like a little sidetracky, but it was well enough. And I did like the ultimate payoff of, you know, as much. And I've never been one of those people. It's like, oh, they're showing the Waynes dying again. But this time I kind of saw it where it was like, okay, they're doing it again. Like they showed them getting out of the theater. I lean over to Liz. I'm like, they're doing it again. Because I knew. I was like, oh, there's no way. There's a riot going on and they're coming out of Zorro. And yeah, it's happening. It's happening, everybody. Everybody buckle up. the Waynes are dying again. I felt like the pearls were a little like, I want to see a version that doesn't do the pearls. Do something different. I get iconography and all that stuff, but if I were to ever show, like if I ever did a Batman thing and I were to show the Waynes dying again, I would totally mix it up a little bit. This movie mixed it up well enough because you didn't expect that to happen in this movie. And because I had thought about earlier on in the movie, I was like, oh yeah, because they're not dead yet. Like I didn't even think that they would show the Waynes dying in this movie. It didn't even occur to me. Didn't even see it coming. So when it came around, I was like, oh, that's clever enough. Like I thought that was interesting. But when it comes to things that I did see coming, Zazie Beetz plays his neighbor character, who early on in the movie they're shown riding in the elevator together. She has a child, and they just kind of share this moment. She's kind of exhausted at the end of the day, and they share this moment where she kind of just does this like, you know, puts her fingers into kind of a gun shape and, you know, pretends to shoot herself. You know, I used to do that all the time. Just like, so, you know, it's just kind of one of those things. It's like, end of the day, you're exhausted. It's been a bit of a day, and you're just like, and he then kind of returns it when she's going into her apartment. He recreates it and does it in a little bit more kind of a clowny way, a bit more exaggerated, makes her smile. She just goes into her apartment. And that's it. So it's set up that we know that she's, you know, the neighbor down the hallway. And shortly after that, we're seeing, was it specifically? See, now I'm trying to remember the order of it all. After that, we kind of start seeing them have little moments together, but there's not too much really like dialogue in those scenes. It's for the most part either it wasn't right after. Did he invite her to the comedy thing before that? Because he had done a stand-up session at one point, and he invited her, and we see her kind of sitting in the corner, and he's kind of bombing on stage. He's getting some laughs, but it's more so awkward laughter to him not being able to really kind of deliver on the material. And the music then swells up, and after he's been bombing a little bit, and it kind of makes it seem like he's doing okay after that. And we see Zazie Beetz sitting in the corner and kind of smiling and laughing. And I'm like, oh, she's not there. This is completely in his head. There's no way. Because he was bombing. Like, he was just absolutely bombing. I was like, there's no way she would just be sitting there going, yeah, this is great. Like, so that was kind of the first big indicator that, oh, she's not real. This isn't a thing. Like, and then after he kills the three guys in the subway, we see him dancing in the bathroom that he ends up running to down the street. And that stuff was really cool. Like, that stuff I liked. The kind of more auteur cinema, the feeling of whatever. And like it was shot beautifully, and it was really kind of bizarre, and it felt like he was really kind of letting himself out. It was him kind of embracing himself and having this like true moment where he was connecting to the spirit of the person he really is. And because the rest of the time he has this laughter kind of coming out of him and he's just trying to choke it back. He's choking on it, but he's trying to suppress it. He's always covering his mouth and going, while he's laughing. He's really kind of trying to suppress that. So this is kind of a moment where he could let it out. I wish there would have been a moment where maybe he was like, maybe in that moment he's in the bathroom and he's dancing and then he starts laughing and he doesn't try to hold it back. Like something like that, something that really kind of makes it kind of like, wow. Because other than that, it's just the music and him dancing and that's cool. But it goes on for maybe a little bit too long. And but it does give you that vibe and that like that thing. So right after that, we see him like going to her apartment and like making out with her. And I'm like, yeah, she's definitely not real. Like, so when it comes around to the actual like reveal that she is not real, because we see, he takes her out to dinner and stuff like that at one point, and they really don't show much of their interaction, and it felt just like a sidetrack that was just a little too obvious and didn't need to really even be in there. I felt like that could have been cut out completely and had been fine. I mean, it shows some of his psychosis and like, he's kind of creating his own reality within like whatever. Because early on in the movie, we also see he's kind of like teleported when he's watching television, the Robert De Niro, I think Franklin Murray show, Murray. We see that he kind of imagines himself in the audience. And again, right when it cut to him watching the show to him being in the audience, I was like, oh, this is also not real. But I did like that scene a lot. I really liked the scene where he's, I take care of my mother. And it's like, and Franklin, or I don't know if it's Franklin Murray. I'm pretty sure it's Franklin Murray. But Robert De Niro's talk show host character invites him on stage and is like, introduce yourself. And it's like, I really did like that scene a lot. I thought that played out very interestingly enough, and then eventually cut back to, him just watching the TV. A little bit more of something like that would have been good. Because you got stuff like that in King of Comedy where Robert De Niro is imagining himself having lunch with Jerry or whatever, and he's just kind of, it cuts back to him talking to himself. And it's really interesting. I thought like the way that was done was really interesting. I feel like how it was done in this movie, particularly with the Zazie Beetz stuff, wasn't the best. But it kind of makes me wonder what else might not have been real. Is there anything else in there that might not have been real? And maybe there was. Maybe there's a little bit more of a layer on top of that we don't know about, or I just didn't notice. But that was a little too on the nose and a little just kind of like just straight up like kind of took me out of the movie a little bit, because it was just like, I know that she's not real, and then the surprise happens and it's like such a shocking thing within the movie, at the very least to the character. And you know what, I don't know if I can really discount that though. It's just because I knew what it was doing doesn't necessarily take away the impact for the character and all that stuff. But it's like, it almost felt like it wasn't needed. But it was the result of him not being on his medication anymore and him, losing his job and all the buildup of all this stuff. But it wasn't that effectively done for me. It was just kind of off. The reason why I knew she wasn't real in the first place was it was very not very intentionally off, but it was very off to begin with. It wasn't jiving with reality, which maybe it was intentional. I don't know. But it was just kind of one of my things that was a little bit of a weakness of the movie, was that predictability. Something I didn't know where it was going towards the end. Particularly like, like I was talking about the spats of violence and all that stuff. When he kills the guy, the little person and the guy who gave him the gun early on in the movie come to visit him after they find out that his mom's dead, and he had killed, Arthur had killed his mother because she was mentally ill herself and had adopted him and didn't stop him from being abused when he was a young child. And he kind of took it out on his mother, who was just, kind of didn't help him out much when he was younger, that he's now finding out. That was a little, maybe I missed something there, but I think the thing was that he was abused as a child and she just didn't stop it because she was, mentally deranged herself and she had narcissistic tendencies. And so clearly so does he. But him killing her because, it's not that like I guess she did kind of lie to him, but yeah, I don't know. That stuff like didn't really fully click with me. Again, it was pretty rough, but at the same time, like, you know, I kind of saw that it felt like a natural progression. Like he was going to kill her once it did happen. Like, oh shit, he killed her. But then his friends are showing up, friends, quote unquote, showing up to kind of pay respects to his mother and see if he's okay. And he, you know, locks the chain lock on the door and then violently, surprisingly kills the guy who gave him the gun, the big guy who gave him the gun, with a pair of just scissors, just regular metallic scissors, and just goes to town while he has this white face paint on. And here's the part that I didn't find particularly hilarious, which the audience loved. It seemed like everybody was laughing like crazy, but I didn't find it to be that funny. Was the little person can't reach can't reach the lock on the door. And there was tension there, because the whole thing was, he was like, I'm not going to kill you. Joker said, I'm not going to kill you. You were the only one who was nice to me. Which if he had killed him, I was going to be a little bit kind of perturbed, just because I really liked that character. He was the only one who was nice to him. And so if he had killed him, I would have been pretty upset. But, you know, that he's not letting, well, not that he's not letting him out, but in the beginning of that scene, he locks the lock on the thing. I was like, oh, he's probably going to kill them both. Just because he was locking that lock. But then when he said, it's okay, you can go. And maybe that's the Joker kind of making a joke. Maybe that's the whole thing there. But, you know, then the guy tries to go around and he can't reach the lock. And that's kind of the thing. It's like, Arthur, the door's locked. And that got everybody laughing, him trying to reach the thing. And it seems a little lowbrow to me. Like, okay, it's a little person jumping because he can't reach something. Ha 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 ha. I don't know. I didn't find that particularly hilarious like everybody else seemed to. So that didn't quite strike me as much. The thing that did make me laugh was when Arthur was on the show and he gives that long kiss to that Dr. What is it? Dr. Joyce or Dr. Jane or something like that. When he's like practically making out with the doctor lady that was the previous guest on the show. That was really funny to me. That was kind of also the biggest kind of second laugh in the movie. That was the big reaction from the audience, outside of just in general, like the reaction to the murders happening in the movie. So yeah, those were kind of the big reaction moments. I mean, Joaquin was really lighting up as the Joker at those points, though. Like when he killed the guys in the subway, when he killed the guy who gave him the gun, like you kind of like he has the white makeup on and he has blood splattered on him, and he's kind of like he's mocking his coworker dude, the little guy, because he has, you know, the kind of Cockney British accent sort of deal. So he's like recreating his accent and talking to him that way. You know, that kind of lights up a little bit for me. But then just after that scene where he murders the guy who gave him the gun, I am not okay with the needle drop that we get for him dancing down the stairs. It does the like that's played at like Hurricanes games during halftime, like to hype up the crowd. Like that didn't fit for me with the moment where the Joker is becoming the Joker. Like, why? No. Like, I like the song that they play during the trailer where he's dancing, and I think it's mainly that Smile, like the song I was singing at the start of this podcast. I really did not like that needle drop of that song for that moment. It didn't fit for me. It really took me out of the moment, and I was like, oh no. Like, it was really tough for me to focus after that. I was like, oh no, like why this song? Why this song particularly? It didn't gel well with me, and it eventually did switch to the score. Like, I love the cinematography during that scene. That scene like looks amazing. That's all really great. Song not jiving with me at all. And it eventually, like I said, does switch to the score. And there's like one of the last shots, like a part of that sequence when he's dancing. You see the two cops behind, like you see these two silhouettes down the stairs, kind of in the sunlight, and he's kind of further down. I really love that shot. That shot looks so good. And I knew it was the cops. I was like, and then it like shows them up close. I'm like, yeah, okay, that's perfect. Like that's a really cool just image in general, knowing that it's like authority is way off in the distance. And here's Joker like kind of just reveling in his own, horribleness, but also being alive and awakened. And like, it's really cool. And like a lot of like, just a lot of really good visual stuff going on there, and a lot of symbolism and all that jazz. So I as a wannabe cinematographer, I'm a sucker for that stuff, and it's really good, and it's really well, like that would be one of the moments where I'm like, it's really well directed, outside of the fact that I don't like the song choice, but that's just me. Maybe other people disagree with that. It just didn't. It's one of those get pumped songs, but it didn't. It was more so like, oh, this song. It'd be like doing the y'all ready for Joker? Like I wouldn't be down for that song to be dropped right then. So, let's get ready to rumble. But so yeah, so fast forwarding, he's on the Franklin Murray show. I'm assuming it's Franklin Murray. I'm just going to really double down and say Franklin Murray the rest of the time. The Robert De Niro show. He asked him to introduce him as Joker, all that stuff, because he says, let's take a look at this Joker. When he played his own, his stand-up comedy clips on the show before, it got a really kind of popular reaction, playing his bad stand-up. The audience really liked it. And, there's this thread throughout the entire movie, like pretty much anybody who really kind of wronged Arthur at any point ended up, getting killed by him. And they had been seeding up to the point when he's on the show that he's going to kill himself as the big punchline, on the show. And I was really wondering if it was going to go that direction, if he was actually going to go through with it or not. And they get to the point where he's on the show, he's queuing up his knock knock joke where he's, the punchline from what we've been told up to this point is, by himself. He's been doing the finger trying to shoot himself thing, and he had the gun and all that stuff. And he decides not to do it. And then he kind of goes into this big speech. Like, I mean, this is where the Joker it felt a little weird. Like he felt like a different character than what we've seen throughout this entire thing. Like his inflection changes. He's going like Murray, like he's trying to be this different thing, different person. And I get it. He just changed. Like he is now full on Joker for the most part. But he does seem still a little hesitant and still a little not super fully comfortable, because he comes out super confidently. But then he also kind of slides back into a little bit. He's nervous. He is clearly nervous about what he's about to do. And he's kind of it seems like he's renegotiating within his brain about what hees going to do, because his original intention was he was going to kill himself on this show. But he then goes into this big speech about how, the downtrodden are, sick and tired of being whatever, blah, blah, blah. Like, I can't remember the specific speech. It also was mixed weirdly, where it seemed like the music was getting real loud, and I was struggling to make out everything that he was saying. And he was also getting very emotional too, on top of that, because they're having this conversation where he's talking about, he reveals that he's the one who killed the people on the subway. Then we get to the point where he shoots Robert De Niro's talk show host, Franklin Murray. And my goodness, that part was jarring for me. I mean, not that it didn't make sense. It makes sense that he would shoot him. And it causes this kind of mass pandemonium within the studio and all that stuff. And it's very shocking, especially the way it's portrayed. It's just very kind of like, oh, fuck. Like it just seems just very shocking. And it was done very well. It was done very well. It's just, him giving that speech just beforehand was a little on the nose, and it felt like it was kind of summating the movie in a way that didn't need to necessarily be explained fully. And I feel like something different could have been done there to have been more satisfying of a build up to that moment, Like I was very much like, where is this going? Like, what is going to happen? Especially once he threw out his plan of shooting himself. Like, where is this going? What is he doing? And what is that voice that he's doing? Because his voice is different too. Like he's putting on a completely different voice. not exactly completely different, but he's adding like a lisp in there a little bit. He's being kind of like sassy with his delivery. And that was kind of, I was just wondering what that choice was there. But after that, I think the stuff we get is pretty great. We have the whole Wayne's getting murdered thing, him in the car, getting freed by the crowd, and he has blood on his face, and his makeup is mainly worn off at that point, and he just had been in a car accident, so he's relatively delirious. And they kind of raise him on top of this cop car, and he's standing there, and he smears the blood on his face into a smile, which was really cool. I thought that was great. But after that, we don't get anything more other than kind of an epilogue scene where he's in the I imagine it's the Arkham institution that we had seen earlier in the movie, and he's being psychoanalyzed by a new but different doctor, but it kind of feels like it's back to that system that failed him in the first place, and we've kind of come full circle back to where he's now a completely transformed person who's kind of come around to becoming this Joker character. And he's no longer having any of it. And he ends up murdering that psychiatrist lady. And the very last thing we see is him being kind of like a Benny Hill thing, where he's just running back and forth between two different rooms down a hallway. Like he's strutting down the hallway with like bloody footprints kind of coming around. And then he tries to run, and then he's being chased by a guard, and that's the end of the movie. And that just kind of made me left the theater going, God, he was a scary Joker. As far as if I had seen this movie when I was younger, and I saw plenty of movies that I shouldn't have seen when I was a kid, but shouldn't have seen, quote unquote. I saw plenty of movies when I was younger that were, obviously meant for adults, but this movie, I don't know how I would have reacted to this movie. It's kind of like with the first time I saw Taxi Driver. First time I ever saw Taxi Driver, I was like, whoa, that was a little dark. That was just super dark, and I didn't quite fully understand it. And I want to say I was still a teenager when I saw that movie, because it was just one of those movies I always heard. Taxi Driver, man, it's one of those movies. Martin Scorsese. And then watched it again, a month or so ago with Liz, and it definitely sat way more different with me now. One, because I am older and I've kind of experienced more stuff. There's a lot of politics involved. There are politics involved with sociopolitics and actual governmental politics involved with Taxi Driver, and a lot of things, prostitution and a lot of things that you don't quite fully understand as a kid, that kind of come back around and kind of make you realize. Taxi Driver is a complicated movie, but it's definitely, you digest it differently as an adult than as a kid who doesn't have that much experience in the world, and you can't really take away a lot of the themes and things that the movie is trying to say or saying. I think that movie is very much up for interpretation in a lot of different ways, but very interesting movie. It definitely has aged incredibly. Obviously, New York is not what that New York was, but anymore. But it is still a movie of its time that is very shocking and also very, very well made for when it was made. Anyway, Joker. I have talked for an hour about the Joker. I did not think I was going to go this long about the movie. And I'm very curious to know what y'all thought. What your specific thoughts on the movie were. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Were you kind of like me? Were you kind of middle of the road? I mean, I don't think anybody can deny that Joaquin wasn't great in this movie. I don't think anybody can deny that this movie doesn't look fantastic. It is filmed beautifully. The cinematography is just something to behold. And some really good music in there. There is some good music. I was kind of waiting for that Send in the Clown song. I mean, I guess the drunk guy sang it, but that wasn't a good rendition. I was kind of expecting that at some point in the movie. It was in the trailer, and it was the credits music. It was, I think I wanted to say it was the kind of final song that plays during the credits, but or the first song that plays during the credits once they start rolling after the end. I really liked the titles. The titles of the movie were really cool, and the old school Warner Brothers logo was also super neat. I'm so used to the kind of like Zack Snyder / Christopher Nolan, like changing up the logos where it's like, Christopher Nolan would change the tint of the logo and then Zack Snyder would kind of use because it seems like Warner Brothers doesn't mind having those stylized titles as opposed to using the straight up regular logo, which I mean, in this one, they used the 80s / 70s Warner Brothers logo, which I thought was really cool to kind of bring that vibe in since it was supposed to take place in like the early 80s Gotham. Yeah, aesthetically, I mean, you can't be faulted. The movie looked great. There wasn't really anything wonky in there. Performance wise, I think everybody was really kind of giving it their all. I don't think there were really any, like Robert De Niro was great in it. A lot of the supporting cast were great. So it was more so just a little bit some of the plotting and kind of just in how it gets around to everything. I feel like it's a little sloppy and I was expecting a little bit more from it. I think I fully explained my thoughts on all this stuff. I'm just always worried. I don't like having a contrary opinion. Not that I can't have a contrary opinion, but I don't like disappointing people because I know a lot of people wanted me to love this movie probably. Once it came out, everybody was like, "Oh, I loved it, Dan. When are you going to review it?" Just like, are you waiting to hear me go, "Oh, I loved every minute of it." Like I did like a lot of it. But some of it I could take or leave, like I said. So thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this rambly podcast, me talking my thoughts on the Joker, and I will see you later, and you'll probably hear or see me later. I won't see you later. Will you be around? Are you, when am I going to see you again? Are we going to be doing that thing next week, huh? You and me? You talking to me? Oh, it's Taxi Driver. All right. Bye, everybody.